Chapter 5 Dynamite Missing. "There's only one reason I can think of why anyone would want to steal the tracings," Rick said. He held on for a moment as Zircon steered the Jeep over a bump in the trail. "If word had leaked out about why we're really here, maybe someone in the tourist business would steal the evidence to keep business from being ruined." Scotty spoke up from the rear seat. "There's one big fat flaw in that argument, boy. Why would anybody care so much about business that they want to stay and be blown up? Who thinks more of business than he does of his own skin?" Zircon chuckled. "Well, there may be such people, but I suspect they're scarce." Rick had to agree. He stared through the windshield at the tail of Brad Connell's Jeep. The geologist was leading the way to the firing area. He was alone. Hartz and Brand had tried to assign one of the boys as a helper, but Connell had balked. He insisted that he did not need a helper and that he was used to handling charges alone. He said he did not want to take the risk of another accident like the one of yesterday. "Connell was pretty determined to go it alone," Rick remarked. "Oh, he's upset over the accident with Ruiz," Zircon pointed out. "He probably feels bad because he couldn't see Ruiz when he visited the hospital." Connell had gone into town with Dr. Balgos and paid a call at the executive mansion. While Balgos talked with Governor Montoya, recreating the stolen sketch from memory, Connell had been taken to the hospital by Lieutenant Governor Jamie Guevara. The hospital reported that Ruiz was on the danger list, his condition unchanged. He could have no visitors. Apparently both Guevara and Governor Montoya had tried to assure Connell that he should not be so depressed over what was obviously a freak accident. The trio stopped at their first station, and Connell waved, then continued on his way. Rick watched him out of sight, then turned to go to work. He remembered what the geologist had said the night before. "Connell figures we have months before the volcano blows," he remembered. "What?" Zircon looked up sharply. "How did he arrive at that conclusion?" "From Dr. Williams' sketch." The big scientist checked the detonator thoughtfully. "He must have figured on a straight upward flow of the magma, but from the shape of that magma front, I think it's highly unlikely it will progress in any such regular fashion. Instead, the front probably will increase erratically, but in a kind of progression. It may double its frontage at approximately regular periods." Scotty scratched his chin. "Double its frontage? What does that mean?" "Maybe 400 square feet today, 800 tomorrow, 1,600 the day after. We won't know the rate of growth or the time scale until we've watched it for a while. But I talked with Balgos and Hartson last night at some length, and their opinion is we probably have a couple of weeks, maybe 3 or 4, but not months." Rick whistled. "That fast? When will we be sure?" Zircon shrugged. "Can't tell. We'll keep shooting on a daily schedule, and maybe in 3 or 4 days we'll see enough growth in the front to make an estimate, but even that can be misleading. If the magma strikes a softer area, it can grow even more rapidly. Our best bet will be to keep a daily watch from now on." Rick looked up at the extinct cone of El Viejo. In his imagination, he saw the top blow off in an earth-shaking explosion, and millions of tons of white-hot lava spurted into the air. Then when the lava came down... "We better get moving," he said. "It's almost time for our first shot." "Want to connect up?" Zircon asked. "I guess so." Rick had never handled dynamite before, but there was no time like the present to learn. He took sticks from his pocket, then a cap. Zircon handed him the crimping tool. He put a cap in place, then, with infinite care, put the crimping tool in position. He took a deep breath and squeezed. Nothing happened, except the cap was now held tightly to the dynamite. Rick let out a breath and grinned. Zircon and Scotty grinned back. "When you get real salty," Scotty said, "you'll crimp the caps on with your teeth." "Huh," Rick said, "and blow my head off?" "It's possible," Zircon agreed. "It has happened. My advice is, don't try it. I've seen men do it, but it always gives me the shudders. Come on, let's plant the charge and lay the wire." The shots went off on schedule, and the party returned to the hotel. Later, in analyzing the shots and making a new sketch, Jeffrey Williams thought the magma front had grown slightly from the previous day, but since the first tracings were gone, there was no way to be sure. David Riddle and Brad Connell walked in as he finished. The two, using respirators, had been to inspect the hot springs area. "Nothing new," Riddle reported. "The only sign of activity is a fresh outpouring of hydrogen sulfide. It's bubbling up through the mud. It could be a pocket of gas that was suddenly released. The springs won't tell us much." Hartzenbrandt said thoughtfully, "I'm afraid you're right, Dave. Nothing to do but to keep shooting. And we'll lock up the papers at night so we can keep track of what's going on. One thing we'd better do is start a survey of the entire cone above the level where our shots give us information. I'd like to be sure we're not overlooking any new gaps or fissures in the mountain itself. But can we do it with the manpower we have available and still keep shooting?" Rick spoke up. "I know how we can help, Dad. Scotty and I can handle our stations alone now. That will leave Dr. Zirkin free for other things. Then, if we change stations with Brad Connell and he takes the closer ones, he can get back here a good hour earlier and do other work." "No!" Connell exploded. Hartzenbrandt and the other scientists looked at him in surprise. "Why not?" Dr. Brad asked. "It seems like a sensible suggestion, Brad." It is," Connell said hurriedly. "It's just that, well, maybe I'm still too upset over that accident. But I know the terrain now. These kids don't. They should stick to the stations where they've been operating, and I'll handle my own. It's just that I don't want any risks whatsoever. My own part of the mountain is a lot rougher, and they'd be carrying dynamite and caps over some pretty bouncy trails. I don't like it. I think we should stick to our own stations." The geologist obviously felt strongly about it, and Hartzenbrandt agreed. "Since you feel that way, Brad, we'll let things go as they are. Hobart, can the boys handle the shots?" "Sure," Zirkin stated. "As long as Rick doesn't crimp the caps with his teeth. Of course, if he does, we'll still get the readings, but we may lose Rick." "No danger," Rick retorted. "Besides, you wouldn't get a reading because the shot wouldn't be timed right." Hartzenbrandt saw the big scientist was joking. "If Rick feels adventurous, he can kick mountain lions for sport instead. I'm told there are some on the mountain." "Jaguars," Dr. Balgos offered. "Not your typical North American cats. These are much fiercer. They react faster to a kick, if you can get close enough to kick one." Brad Connell laughed heartily. "The boys can lure 'em with catnip," he said. Rick glanced at the geologist. The laugh hadn't rung true. "I suggest we also save time by shooting in the early morning," Hartzenbrandt added. "That will leave the afternoon for other activities. Jeff, if you can manage to keep your head out of the way of blunt instruments, perhaps you'd like to make a better sketch of the magma front. Can we assign the boys as guards?" Dr. Williams caressed the bruise on his head. "Not necessary, Hartson. I'll lock my door and keep my face towards the window, but for now, how about dinner?" There was no disagreement. After dinner, Rick and Scotty lingered over coffee with Dr. Balgos, Julius Weiss, and Hartzenbrandt. The others had excused themselves and gone back to their rooms. The boys were trying to learn more about volcanoes, but the scientists had a tendency to get involved in discussions of some of the finer points of geophysics, and long minutes would pass before Rick or Scotty could bring them back to the main point with a question. In the midst of an interesting discussion of the Hawaiian volcanoes by Dr. Balgos, Honorario burst into the dining room and hurried to the Peruvian scientist. Rick couldn't follow the rapid Spanish, but Balgos jumped to his feet, his face white, and translated swiftly. "Honorario says all the dynamite is gone."